Mr. Nursery. Mr. Nursery liked to know about everything that was going on. He was always poking his nose into other people's business. Mr. Nursery was the sort of person who, if it came upon a locked door, couldn't resist looking through the keyhole to see why the door had been locked. Mr. Nursery was the sort of person who, if he'd found an unopened letter addressed to somebody else, would simply have to open it to find out what was inside. Mr. Nursery was the sort of person who, if he was sitting reading his paper on the train, would much rather read the paper of the person sitting next to him. Naturally, as you might well imagine, Mr. Nursery was not very popular. People did not like the way in which Mr. Nursery would peek and pry into their affairs. They did not like it at all. Not one really small bit. But did that stop Mr. Nursery peeking and prying? It did not. Mr. Nursery lived in a funny, tall, thin house in a place called Tiddletown. The people of Tiddletown decided that Mr. Nursery was becoming much too nursery, and so they held a meeting to discuss what to do about him. We must find some way of stopping him being so nursery. Excuse me. Yeah, so Mr. Chips, the town carpenter. That's right, said Mrs. Washer, ran the Tiddletown laundry. He's to be taught a lesson. If only we can think of a way to stop him poking his nose into everything, said Mr. Brush, the painter. And then a small smile spread over his face. Listen, he said, grinning. I have a plan. All his friends gathered round to listen to his plan. Following morning, Mr. Nursery was out walking along Tiddletown High Street when he heard somebody whistling behind one of the closed doors. I wonder what's going on, he thought to himself, and tiptoeing up to the door, he quietly opened it and peeped in. Splash! Went a heavy wet paintbrush right on the end of Mr. Nursery's nose, covering it with bright red paint. Oh, Tar, I am sorry, said Mr. Brush, who was painting the inside of the door. Well, Mr. Nursery had to go straight home to try and remove the red paint, which was really difficult, but not really simple, and painful as well. Mr. Brush chuckled to himself. The plan had begun. The following day, Mr. Nursery was walking past the laundry when he heard somebody laughing on the other side of the wall. Wonder what's going on, he thought to himself, and standing on tiptoe, he looked over the wall. Snap! went a cloves peg right on the end of Mr. Nurse's nose. "Oh, dear, I am sorry," said Mrs. Washer, who was hanging up clothes on the washing line on the other side of the wall. Poor Mr. Nursery removed the cloves peg and went off down the street feeling extremely sorry for himself and for his very poor red nose. Mrs. Washer chuckled to herself. The plan was working. The next day, Mr. Nursery was going past a fence when he heard hammering. "I wonder what's going on here," he thought to himself, and creeping really quietly and really sneakily towards the end of the fence, he peeped round. Bang! Went a hammer right on the end of Mr. Nurse's nose. "Oh, I am sorry." So Mr. Chips was nailing up a loose plank in the fence. Poor Mr. Nursery had to go home immediately and bandage his poor red sore nose. So Mr. Chips grinned a broad grin. The plan was working really